Hello and welcome back. Today we're going to be working on the Allegro section by Marcello in the third Suzuki book. This one is going to be fast. Goal BPM is 110 BPM, which we are going to be sitting at... So, those are 16ths. It is going to be wickedly fast at full tempo. So, there's going to be some things that we need to cover. There's going to be some technical side of things, or there's going to be a technical side of things that'll be interesting. But yeah, let's go ahead and get right into it. We're going to be starting significantly slower. So we'll be starting about 70. Let's go ahead and take a look at the first line. First line halfway through. So, okay. This is what it sounds like. 1, 2, 3. You know what? We'll back that up just a little bit. So, we have starting on a pickup note. We have this interesting section. Since we're starting on a pickup, the accent is going to be not on the repeated note. It's going to be on the descending note. And then we go up into this section. So that one's going to be kind of we have the call, and then we have the response. So here's the call. And the response. Let's go ahead and take a look at that. Fingering should be relatively straightforward. At the tail end of measure 1, we have a shift to hit that E with your fourth finger, and then you're right back down into first position. Let's go ahead and run through that a few times. 1, 2, 3. Again. 1 and 2 and 3 and moving on to the next section, we have the same kind of idea going on here. So we have that. And then we go into the response. So let's run through that a couple of times. 1 and 2 and 3 and. This one will be a full shift into fifth position. 4, 1, and then back into first position. So let's do that a couple of times. 1, 2, 3, 4. Done. Okay, that's where my counting is off. My apologies. So let's go ahead and do 1, 2. Let's do measures 3 and 4. 1, 2, and 3 and 4 and. One more time. 1, 2, and 3 and 4 and. If you are having trouble hitting that shift, what you can do is just play open through fourth finger in first position. And then the next note will be your first finger. If you do that on the D string, you can double check it with a string above. Let's do that a couple of times on the D string. just open 1, 3, 4, and then first finger, and then double check it with your open A. So 1, 2, 3. Again, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So let's hit that measures 3 and 4, and then we'll tie in the entire first line so we can get the first chunk together. So pick up to measure 3. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Okay. Let's go ahead and do that entire first line, ending halfway, a little over halfway through measure 4. Starting at the beginning, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Okay, one more time. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. So you see how they have that, the first measure 1 and then measure 2, and then measure 1 repeats in measure 3 with something slightly different, and then measure 2 repeats in measure 4 with something slightly different. Now we get into some fast stuff. So the last beat of measure 4 and then the first 3 beats of measure 5 are going to sound like this. Okay, so let's go ahead and do, pardon me, that really quick. Last beat of measure 4, first 3 beats of measure 5. You're going to want to find the balance point of your bow. Not like balance point like this, because that puts it a little bit farther back than we need. We need about the midpoint of the bow. It'll be where it balances best on your string, so you can move quickly without it being super, super airy, but also without it bouncing like that. So that's usually about the midpoint, where you can move quickly while keeping the bow hair on the strings without it being super, super rough and your arm way out there, but before your bow gets super crunchy and is trying to bounce all over the place. So that's going to be right about that midpoint is going to be where you want to be for this. So you can move nice and quick. That's what we're looking for. So let's practice. They're just downward runs. Last beat of 4, first 3 of 5. So let's do that. 1 and 2 and 3 and. One more time. 2 and 3 and. Now we do have a shift here, and we're going to go all the way to 5th position. It'll be a shift to 5th and then a shift to 4th position, I believe. And you're going to have to reach back with your first finger to hit that C natural. So 4, 2, and then a shift to that 4th finger on E, 2nd on D, 4th finger on E again, reach back for that C natural. So let's do that a couple of times. 3, 2 and 3 and. Let's do that one more time. 2 and 3 and.
This lesson is brought to you by the Musician's Edition practice book. Make goals and keep track of progress throughout the whole year. When you're done with this video lesson, don't forget to mark this practice time in your Musician's Edition practice book. Now back to the video.
So let's go ahead and tie measure 4 from where we had been back into where we are currently ending. So we'll be starting on 1 from the tail end of measure 3, and then shifting back into first position. So that's what we're going to be doing. We are taking this spot instead of just starting in first position, so we can get used to going from 5th back to 1st and making sure we're hitting where we need to be. So start of measure 4, 3 and 4 and. One more. We're going to do that a couple more times. So again, starting in measure 4, ending where we have ended so far. 3 and 4 and. Okay, and one more time, and then we'll move on from there. 3 and 4 and. Keep in mind the markings for forte and piano there. We do have kind of a call and response. Right now we're just working on the notes, but later on when you go back to work on this, definitely pay attention to your dynamics. So moving on from there, we are second beat of measure 7. So we have this, and then we go back and do, it starts the same, but it does something different. Apologies, I get kind of carried away, but I like this little section. So, second beat of measure 6. We're back up in 5th position. And then it's the same descending figure falling by a step each time. So we start in 5th position. Let's go ahead and look at that a little bit closer. So, second group of 4 notes or first group of 16ths in measure 6. Let's go ahead and do that. Go ahead and join me. 3, 4, and one more time. 4 and. So this is the same shift that we had done in just a second ago, but we're going to continue the pattern on. Let's do that one more time. Second beat of measure 6. Go ahead and join me. We'll just do those 4 notes, and then we'll figure out where we're at, and then continue on from there. So it'll be 4 and 1 and. One more time. 4 and. And then from here, it'll be 4, 1, 3, or 4, 2, 1, sorry. So the entire figure sounds like this. So the last note before you go back up is going to be where your emphasis is at. So it's a bunch of frilly stuff, but the basic overall feel is. That's what we're trying to get at. That's what we're looking for. So let's do measure 6 in its entire. Let's do last measure or last beat, last 4 notes of measure 5, just to get us into it, because this one's kind of rough. You kind of have to see how it's put together before you break it down. So last beat of measure 5, 2 and 3 and. That's what we're looking for. The annotations in here definitely help to figure out where you need to be on that 4th finger, and then once you're back in first position, you're back in first position. So let's do that run, and we'll run through that a few times. Second beat of measure 6. Go ahead and join me. 4 and 1 and. One more time. Let's do it again. 4 and 1 and. Again. 1 and. One more time for good luck. 1 and. Okay. And then moving on from there, second half of measure 7 is going to be very simple. So let's go ahead and do that section, and then we'll tie all of this back together. We are starting 3rd beat of measure 7, the second half. Go ahead and join me. 1 and 2 and. One more time, and then we'll tie it back into the high complicated stuff, and then we'll tie it back into the beginning, and then we'll finish out the entire deal, and then we'll have the first section done. So second half of measure 7, go ahead and join me. 1 and 2 and. So this is a very common pattern where you'll have something presented and then repeated but quieter. So let's go ahead and tie that back into the last beat of measure 5 with the. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. Last beat of measure 5, go ahead and join me. 2 and 3 and. Okay, and then let's go ahead and tie. Let's just start from the beginning, and then we'll end halfway through measure 9. Kind of hard to believe that they have this many notes in just 9 measures, but when you're running 16th notes, there's an awful lot of notes on the page. So, starting at the beginning, through halfway through measure 9, let's go ahead and take a look at that. 2 and 3 and 4. the tail end of this, we do have a shift. Looking at measure 9 again, we have the... So instead of using your fourth finger there, you're going to use your second, as is annotated on the page, so that you can hit that E for the downwards run. It's going to look like this. Cut that. So we're going to have a shift to the second finger on the D, where your fourth would normally go, so that you can hit that next E and then finish out that run and take us to the end. So it's going to look like this. And then we'll finish out the last part in just a second. So the first time around in measure 8, we have... But then it changes. So instead of doing the same thing, we're going to have that shift up to 2. And that way we can hit that last run. So let's run through that a couple of times. Just starting at beginning of measure 9. Let's just do most of the way through 10. So go ahead and join me. Measure 9, 3, and 4. One more time. We'll do this a couple more times. So, same place. Beginning of measure 9, 3, and 4, and... One more time. 3, and 4. Okay. Let's go ahead and take a look at the last measure and change. We do have something kind of fun once we finish that run. So we have... And then you shift to 5th position on the D string. And then one more shift. That's what we're looking for. So let's go ahead and practice that real quick. Starting with that shift up to 5th position on the D string. Okay. Let's go ahead and do that a couple of times. Just start in that shifted position, and then we'll go from there. On the 4th finger on the C on the D string. That's a lot of qualifiers, but it makes sense when you look at the music. Okay. 2, and 3, and... Again. 2, and 3, and... One last time. 2, and 3, and... Okay, and let's go ahead and tie that back into measure 9. Yeah, measure 9 should work. Beginning of measure 9. 3, and 4, and... One more time. 3, and 4, and... Okay. Let's go ahead and tie that back into measure second beat of measure 8, where we have where we have most of that really high stuff. That'll be 3 or 4 and 1 and start. just so that we're all on the same page. Okay. 4 and 1 and. Okay, second beat of measure 8. Go ahead and join me. 4 and 1 and. Let's do that one more time, starting at the same place. Second beat of measure 6. There we are. Go ahead and join me. 4 and 1 and. And then let's go ahead and start at the beginning. And then we'll tie that all together, and then we'll work on speeding it up a little bit. So starting at the beginning, that'll be 3 and 4. Da, 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 da. Okay. Pick up at the beginning. 3 and 4. Okay. Okay. Let's try it. Da, 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 da. So this is sitting at 80. Da, da, da. Now keep in mind we're shooting for 110. I'm not going to go full speed, just because timing is an issue, as well as this is something that takes a lot of practice. So this is going to require some work on your own time to get this one fully up to speed. But so let's go ahead and start at the beginning. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Let's do that one more time. Okay. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Okay, so there's the first section done. Keep in mind, this is laid out with a repeat. And there is a repeat for the second section, so it'll be A, B, B. We're running about 30 BPM slow. Here's about 90, which is 110 is about what I was finding for this. There's a couple of recordings sitting closer to like 100, 102. Okay. So this is a little bit closer to original tempo. Wickedly fast. And we need to go 10 to 20 BPM faster than that. So, in the interest of not bogging this down with here's 80 BPM, here's 90 BPM, here's 100 BPM, here's 110. Also because 110 is rough. Let's go ahead and move on to the next section. Just keep in mind we are shooting for that 100 to 110 total overall speed. One of the other things that you don't necessarily pick up as compared to is you really do need to be at that balance point so you can go faster without it starting to jump on the strings as you're playing. And that is something that you kind of have to, it's really hard to communicate through video. And you just need to work on practicing. Usually when I start going that fast, I find that I'm usually an inch or two past the middle of my bow, just because at that point I can move faster and I can keep the bow down on the strings with my index finger a whole lot easier than trying to like force it down and still be, and I'm still able to get decent sound out of it. The other thing that you notice with this particular piece is you are playing a large dynamic range at a very high speed. Playing loud, fast, it's kind of hard. Playing quiet, fast is not nearly as hard, but still is difficult. And this one, you are literally going from forte all the way back down to piano. The only wider range would be fortissimo, double forte, to pianissimo, double piano. Thankfully, this does not have that. But something to think about and work on. So moving on to the next section, we have something that it should sound very familiar. That is the second iteration of that theme in the first section. And then we have the first iteration of the main theme in the second position in the second section. So they kind of have an A, B in the first section, and here in the second part they have B, A. So let's just run through that a couple of times and then we'll get into the new stuff. Yeah, let's go ahead and do measure. They don't have a number for that. 15, 14, 13, 12. Measures 12 through 15. Let's go ahead and do those really quick, because we have already learned this. That's one of the things, especially with this type of music, is like you play a thing, you get familiar to hearing it, you get familiar with hearing it, and then later on in the song you can go, oh, I recognize that. That sounds familiar. So it doesn't take nearly as much practice the second time it comes around. Even if it's slightly modified or reversed in this instance. So pick up to measure 12. Go ahead and join me. Let me get my tempo back down. Go ahead and join me. 3, and 4. Again, 3 and 4. Let's do that one more time, just to make sure that it's cemented the second time around. 2 and 3 and 4. Okay, so moving on from here, we have the same kind of deal, but we have it in a slightly different. We have it in a different key with a different feel to it. It's going to sound like this. So you have two moving notes and then a lower note, and then some moving notes up on top, and then a lower note again, and then it just bounces back and forth. It looks disjointed, but when you play it, it makes sense. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. If you can, try to let those lower notes ring a little bit, just so that it isn't just kind of a flat deal, because that moving bass really does contribute in this particular instance. So let's go ahead and pick up to measure 16 through 17. And then at the end, we will include that D note with your second finger on it, just so that we can work on getting that shift in. So, pick up to 16. Go ahead and join me. 2 and 3 and 4. So that last D is prepping us for the 16th notes in this coming section. So let's go ahead and run through that a couple more times. Keep in mind that the first note in measure 16 is a G sharp, so that will be an extended 4. That's, I believe, the only... no, we have some sharps later on. My apologies. I was going to say, I think that's the only sharp we have. No, that is not, in fact, the only sharp we have. So let's go ahead and run through that one more time, and then we'll move on. Actually, we'll go ahead and tie everything back in from the beginning of this section. So pick up to 16 one more time, and then we'll move backward, and then we'll move forward. 2 and 3 and 4. Okay, and then the beginning of the second section to where we just ended. 2 and 3 and 4. Okay, so moving on from there, we're starting with our second finger on the D. And then we are going right back into 16ths. So we'll just do measure 18 and 19 together, because we have a couple of really obnoxious shifts back to back to back to back. Starting with your second finger on the D on the A string, we'll go ahead and use that as the pickup, and then go ahead and join me. I'll take it a little bit slower for measures 18 and 19. 2 and 3 and 4. Apologies for that. But we have this figure. That repeating figure is going to be showing up basically until the end of the piece, just in slightly different variations. So let's go ahead and work on that. So we start in fourth position. We start in third position. Shift back to first. Back to third. Back to first. Keep in mind that G sharp. First position. So we do have those shifts at the beginning of, we have those back to back to back to back shifts at the beginning of 18. That is going to take some practice. So definitely work on those. Definitely use your tuner so that you can make sure that you're getting where you need to be in terms of hitting the right notes. So let's go ahead and do measure 18 by itself real quick. The pickup in measure 17, just so we can get into it. Go ahead and join me. Pick up to 18 and stop at the end of 18. 2 and 3 and 4. One more time. 2 and 3 and 4. One more time. 2 and 3 and 4. Okay. Let's go ahead and move on to measure 19. This is all going to be in first position, so no obnoxious shifts there. 3 and 4 and. Again. Measure 19. 3 and 4 and. Let's go ahead and tie pickup to 18 through to 19. So starting with your second finger on the D on the A string. 2 and 3 and 4. Okay, moving on to measure 20. It's the same kind of repeating figure, but I want to go over it a couple of times just because we are going to be moving so fast. Let's do measures 20 and then 20 and 21. And then we'll take a break and then tie everything back into the beginning of this section and then move forward again. So measure 20. Just measure 20. 3 and 4 and. Again. 3 and 4 and. Okay. Moving on to 21. Let's go ahead and do that, and then we'll finish out on the first beat of 22. So measure 21. 3 and 4 and. Okay. 21 and beginning of 22 again. 3 and 4 and. Okay. Let's go ahead and do 20 to the beginning of 21, and then we'll build backwards and get all that tacked back in. 20 to the beginning of 22. 3 and 4 and. One more time, starting at 20 and then moving on to beginning of 22. 3 and 4 and. Okay, let's do measure 19. Beginning of measure 19, same ending spot. 3 and 4 and. Okay. 19 again. Back to the same stopping point. 3 and 4 and. Okay. And then let's go ahead and do the pickup to 18 so that we're in the right starting point. 18 to the same ending point. 2 and 3 and 4. Pick up to 18. Let's do that one more time. 2 and 3. Pardon me, got that. Pick up to 18, back to the same ending point. 2 and 3 and 4. Okay. Let's go ahead and do the pickup to 16. So now we're getting into something else, but we'll work on that transition, getting into those 16ths. So pick up to 16. 2 and 3 and 4. Let's go ahead and do that one more time. Pick up to 16, 2 and 3 and 4. Okay. One of the things you'll notice through that section 18, 20 is when you're going slow, you play it one way. But to play it faster, you'll notice less movement in your upper arm, but you'll notice a lot of speed developed in your wrist. So we're going relatively slow at the moment. So this is about the pace we're at. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. So a little bit closer to finish tempo. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 is going to sound like this. I believe the camera should be able to catch my wrist. It's not so much the whole arm moving, it's more like this within the wrist, which is where the speed really does pick up. It's the difference between and you can move that fast from the shoulder. It's really obnoxious. The wrist is so much easier. that's going to be where you pick up speed to actually get this up to tempo. Let's go ahead and do the beginning of the second section and then end where we normally have. We'll run through that a couple of times and then we'll move on. This shouldn't be a big deal because we've already learned the first 2 lines of this section. So let's go ahead and do that. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Let's go ahead and move on from there. So last beat of 21 into the next section is going to sound like this, because that's really where the next section picks up. So last beat of 21, so those last 4 notes. So that's what we're looking at. Let's do last beat of 21 through the third beat of 22. And we do need to hit that second finger on the C on the G string to set us up for the next one. So let's work on that a couple of times just so we can work on that shift. Last 4 notes in 21, leaving off the last 4 notes in 22. Go ahead and join me. 2 and 3 and... Let's go ahead and do that a couple of times just so we can work on that shift down to 2. 2 and 3 and... One more time. 2 and 3 and... And then moving on from there, you stay in the exact same position and it's just 4, 2, 1. And then you actually shift into half position. So your 2 is where your first finger would normally go to set us up for the next run. So let's go ahead. Starting with your second finger on the C on the G string. Let's go ahead and go from there. Last 4 notes of 22 into the first note of 23 because there's some weird funky stuff going over here. Last 4 notes of 22, first note of 23. Da, 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 da. One more time. Counting that's really kind of weird because, yeah. It'd be 2 and 3 and... Again. 2 and 3 and... One more time. 2 and 3 and... Let's go ahead and add in the 6 notes preceding that, just so we can get used to that. So leaving off the first beat in 22, ending where we have been. 4 and 1 and... Starting at that B on the A string, one more time. 4 and 1 and. Okay. Let's go ahead and start measure 23. So we're starting on a 1 on a D sharp. It'll be 1, 4, open, and then 2, and then you're back into first position until you shift a little bit. So starting on a 1 on the D sharp, and then 4 on the F sharp. 3 and 4 and. Let's go ahead and do that. We are ending on a 4th finger on the E there, so it is a slight shift. 3 and 4 and. One more time. 3 and 4 and. Okay, finishing that down, let's go ahead and do the last 4 notes in 23 through. Actually, yeah, the rest of this should be relatively straightforward because there's not really much in the way of shifting. Last 4 notes of 23 through 26. So we're starting on 4th finger on the E, and then shifting. We'll just shift back to first position. So 2 and 3 and. In 25, for the second half, I'm in first position, and then just shift back a half step, and then end. So it's 4, 3, 1, 1, 2. Let's do that a couple of times. Last half of 25. Yeah, last half of 25. 1 and 2 and. Again, 1 and 2 and. One last time. 1 and 2 and. Okay. Let's go ahead and tie back to 20. Tail into 20, or last 4 notes of 23. Let's go ahead and do that a couple of times. Starting on a 4th finger. 2 and 3 and. Okay, let's do that a couple more times. 2 and 3 and. Okay, one last time. We'll tie everything back in from the beginning of this second section, and then we will continue on and finish this out. 2 and 3 and. Okay. Let's go ahead and take it back to the beginning of the second section. 2 and 3 and 4. Let's go ahead and go back to the beginning of the second section through to the halfway mark of 26. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. When you play it slow, it's hard to pick up the moving themes. It's hard to pick up the moving lines. But when you start going a little bit faster, you could kind of feel it there. When you start going closer to finish speed, you can pick up a lot more of the themes, a lot more of the like play between different melodic concepts. It's really cool to see how things go at proper or closer to proper speed. Just because you kind of get bouncing back and forth between different ideas. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. So let's go ahead and pick up halfway through 26. We do have this same kind of idea repeated earlier in measure 23. It's just going to be a little bit different. So let's go ahead and pick up there. We'll do halfway through 26 through to the end of 27. Go ahead and join me. 1 and 2 and... One more time. Halfway through 26 to the end of 27. 2, 1 and 2 and... Okay. Let's go ahead and do 28. You know what? Actually, let's go ahead and jump to the end. Let's take a look at the last two measures. The last note of 28 has you on your first finger on the D sharp, and we are going to start there. Yeah, let's go ahead and start there. So last note of 28 to the end. We're just going to play it nice and slow. I don't even think there will be a tempo deal. So this is just so we can get... make sure that we are playing the right notes. Because this has a funky thing with a harmonic in it. So let's go ahead and play that. So we have a D sharp. We have an E on the second finger. Another D sharp. Another E. And then we have a harmonic, which basically, if you take your thumb, put it in the crook of the neck there, technically called the crotch, and then reach down a little bit and lay your third finger down. You should be able to find that harmonic. You can do it with the third or the fourth. Slower paces, I'm used to the third at this kind of pace. I would probably recommend the fourth. What you're going to want to do is you're going to try to find the middle harmonic, the middle of this string, with your fourth finger. When you're a little low, it won't quite do it, but as you bow and slide up, you'll get a nice clear note. That is the harmonic. That is the highest note in the second to last measure with that little open circle above it. That's what you're looking for. That is what that open circle denotes, is a harmonic. And then we have that. We have fourth finger in fifth position. Third on an F sharp. So again, last note in 28 through to the end, just note by note. D sharp, E on second finger, D sharp on first, E on second finger, harmonic on fourth, fourth finger on G, third finger on F sharp, first finger on E. Again, one last time, but we'll do it with a sense of rhythm, but we'll just go slow. That'll be 3 and 4 and. Again, just that same pace. 3 and 4 and. Okay, and then let's go ahead and tie that back into 28. We'll just take it nice and slow. 3 and 4 and. Shift. One more time, same starting point. Beginning in 28. 3 and 4 and. One more time for good luck, and then we'll start tying everything else back in. 3 and 4 and. Okay. Let's go ahead and do halfway through 26 to the end. 1 and 2 and. Let's go ahead and go back to 23. Yeah, let's go ahead and do 23. 3 and 4 and. go back to pick up to 18. 3 and 4. And then let's go ahead and take it all the way back to the beginning of the second section. Yeah. 2 and 3 and 4. Okay, let's try that a little bit faster, and then we'll go ahead and call it a night. We're not going to be running near full tempo, but this is something that definitely needs practice. So let's go ahead and run it a little bit faster. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. So with that faster speed, you can kind of figure out how things flow and how one thing moves into another and then calls back to another thing. So when you are working on building up speed, remember that it is in the wrist, not so much the arm. Make sure that you are staying a little bit past the middle of your bow, so that your bow stays in contact with less effort, and you can move. You can move faster with easier, less stress on your body, and a lot easier to control the bow and get good sound. And then as you are working this up, keep in mind the dynamics are going to be very important for a thing like this. If you have something and then you feel it repeat, or something very close to it repeats, one of them should probably be louder, the other one should probably be quieter. Usually this is a loud first, quiet second kind of a deal. Other than that, good luck. This is a lot of fun. This is not a particularly easy piece. Especially to get it up to full tempo at 110 BPM, 100 to 110 BPM. Yeah, if you have any questions, by all means, please feel free to ask, and then we will get those responded to as quickly as we can. So, thank you very much. I definitely appreciate it, and I think you'll have a lot of fun with this one. Y'all take care. Have a good time, and practice. Lots of practice.